Alright guys, welcome back to the JMax YouTube channel. Joe and Jason have invited me down here today. We're going to go through the manual versus electric Alpha shocks and let's go for a walk through them, eh boys?
Yeah. So the whole idea today is to give you a bit of insight into the JMax Alpha range and the products and what we do and why we do it. Obviously to explain the benefits of the manual and the electric, why you would choose both, but we've got Jace here to run through a bit of the design as well.
Yeah, I think a bit of the design onto why we did what we did and what's different to what else is currently on the market. And we'll go through those steps.
Yeah, all right, awesome. All right, let's rip it in the video and we'll get into it.
All right, well I guess the guys have invited me out today to talk about the Alpha shocks, and I suppose I've been their best candidate because I'm not afraid to use them, so.
Any final words?
Nah, we'll be right, send it.
My choice in using the manual shocks was, I was a bit finicky about having electrical components under the car. Going out, I focus on more hardcore four-wheel driving, which is sort of what I do, but not perform to do. I'm worried about getting sticks or anything like that caught up in around electrical cables and just causing a little bit of damage. So when the manuals, I just wanted ease of mind, comfort, when I'm out bush, out remote, that nothing's gonna go wrong, nothing's gonna break. So knowing that, I've done Cape York twice, I've done Fink twice now, I've done 2 trips to Victoria, heaps of road driving, corrugations, beach trips nearly every second weekend as it goes. And having the adjustability that's manual helps because I can find my sweet spot when I'm touring, but when I'm really going off-road, hardcore, doing any of that sort of stuff, corrugations at the beach, I just drop them right down to the lowest setting and it just works. The difference of also having the manuals, I find you're not too overcompensative to what you adjust to, and that's why I like them. I can sort of set and forget and I don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, so having the adjustability, it's I can set it to whether the ute's really unloaded or fully loaded, what type of trip I'm doing, the terrain, anything like that. I can adjust it to suit. And people think being manual, it's such a labor-intensive task trying to get out and adjust your shocks, and it's when it really comes down to it, it's not that bad because you go out on the tracks, you air down your tyres, that takes 5 minutes. It takes 5 seconds to adjust your shocks to knowing what you're going to be doing. Also with locking your hubs in, you get out, lock your hubs, turn your dial, you set your shocks and you're good to go. So it's not that bad having a manual shock. Yeah, you don't get the comfort of sitting in your car and turning a dial, but it's the set and forget features that matter, where if I'm out bush, out remote, in Fink or Alice, anything like that, it's not a drama, I don't have a drama, and you're just ready to go whenever.
I've been running the Alpha Electrics in my last 2 utes, both 79 series Land Cruisers. One was a 4200 GBM and then this one's obviously the 4495. And I was lucky enough to have the electrics in both of my cars, and I can't vouch enough for having something there at your fingertips to adjust. You're more likely to use it, and it's the same sort of principle. You know, we got tow pros and we got adjustable tunes through, you know, the guys adjust autos. When I first heard of it, I thought it was a little bit of a gimmick, and sort of didn't really take to the idea. Probably, I didn't really have much confidence in the product itself. And then now that I've actually experienced it and used it, whether we're towing the van, the boat, or we're just doing everyday driving, having the adjustability at your fingertips is something different. Having the ability to go from a completely soft ride, as in obviously with 16 stage adjustable, then jumping down to be able to firm them up when either a bit of load is put on the car or the van or the boat's hooked up. That is where the shocks come into their own. So we're just doing a little bit of a drive on one of these side tracks here in Glasshouse. I guess to just show a little bit of what the shocks can do. I mean, look, it's always good to show that, you know, whilst they're built to be a touring sort of platform, you can also, you know, get out and have a bit of a play. Look, this car is definitely more of a grocery getter, so I won't lie about that. Go from them, obviously 300mm stretch in this car, the 4495. Definitely don't have any weight in my 4495 side of it, but you know, it shows you what the car can do and the shocks and the Alphas and how they can ride.
So just heading up the track then, I just soften the shocks up to as low as they go. Just lets them sort of free flow with the track, lets the whole geometry of the suspension work out its way of going up that track as it needs to. The shocks are just there, absorbing everything, articulating, and just doing exactly what they need to do. Works great.
Man, that was awesome. We just did a little hill climb here in Glassy. Obviously, camera doesn't really do it justice, but yeah, stability, it felt great under the wheel. Obviously, you know, it just goes to show that the shocks, whilst predominantly is touring, stability is our focus, you can get out here and have a bit of a play, and the Alphas will always perform really well.
So we get a lot of questions, you know, why did we go down the path of developing our own shock absorber? So probably to keep it into a perspective, we've used a lot of shock brands over the years. Whilst a lot of them great shocks themselves, no real issues in that regard. You know, like everything, there's good and there's bad. However, we took everything we liked from different shocks and worked our way through it to find out what really worked best for us. Now, probably as everyone's aware, we do specialise in the GVM space, but not just the GVM space, the high lift, the big tyres, the bigger GVMs. And so some of these cars can run at 2/3 of their weight empty, and then obviously they get heavier, like by a whole third. So, you know, that car could be 2.6, 2.7 tonne, and fully loaded it's 4.5 tonne, plus throw on the fact that you're towing, etc. We were looking for more. And I think that's where, when we started doing robotic testing and ESC testing, which is ADR 88 for those that are unaware, when we started doing those stability tests with those robots, etc., we were pushing these high lifts and big tyres and testing the stability and handling of the car. And at the end of the day, our focus is safety and the ability for that car to do that job really well and provide an element of safety. So whilst a lot of shocks have adjustability, they might have 60 points of adjustment, 10 points of adjustment, or 100. The reality of it is the volume of adjustment in the physical product itself is about 10 kilos of force. So they don't really change. So we wanted more adjustment in force to compensate for the big changes in the car that we have from a day-to-day use. So we're able to put 3 times more adjustment into the shock. And where that really pays off is we also have active control. So you can put it into active mode. It works off the G-force of the car and stabilizes that car. Now, most of these guys running 70 series, they're running canopies, rooftop tents, all that sort of stuff. So they're very narrow platform, high center of gravity, big lift, big tires. We now can utilize the shock absorbers to help with controlling that car. Not to mention going from it used as a daily driver, empty or wheeling in the bush, all the way up to being heavy and loaded and driving out to the Simpson Desert or the Fink or, you know, the Cape or wherever you want to do it. But that shock will do that job across the board for everything in that space. The other side of it was we had shocks that claimed to be rebuildable, serviceable. A, they don't have parts in Australia. B, they don't have the network to service or warrant them. Or B, they claim to be rebuildable and no one does it. So being able to roll out a product that's made in Australia for Australian conditions, that we can supply parts and service and warrant all over Australia from within Australia, makes that shock the perfect shock for any tourer build or any four-wheel drive build.
So we're just doing a bit of filming, talking about how the Alphas, I guess, operate and drive from a touring perspective. You know, having the ability to adjust them on the fly is certainly something different, because I guess whether you're tuning in from a manual perspective or an electric option, it gives you the best, I guess, chance at dialing in the shocks to use them for what they have been designed to do. So obviously when you're motoring along the road, you know, you're doing 60, 70 Ks, dealing with corrugations and things like that, you want to be able to adjust those shocks. So obviously in a manual option, you need to hop out of the vehicle, get in and dial them in. But then in an electric, you can do it from the comfort of your seat. So, you know, classic example is us driving along, we put the boat on the back and the car sort of feels like it's been a bit I guess you could say pogo sticked. Once we put the shocks and I guess dial the shocks in the back, you firm them up and it takes the drive completely different. So like I said earlier, driving around the road, you probably won't sort of notice it, but once the car is actively working like it is now, this is where the shocks come into their own. This is where they're able to, you know, really turn into, you know, I guess the performance perspective. But then once you start actively using them, that's where their performance comes in. So, you know, once the shock starts heating up, once it starts, you know, getting into its performance side of things, that is where the alphas and the 2.5 and that remote reservoir really kick off. They really just take into their own, and, you know, and Mac, he's done, you know, 120,000 kilometers in that ute that he's got. We did that pre-rego for him. He obviously, you know, had a different shock beforehand, jumped into the alphas, and he's done corrugations. He's been to, I think he's been telling us earlier, he did Think twice, went to Cairns and did Cape twice. So, you know, he's put them through their paces, and he was even vouched for it where he goes, look, I can be loaded at 4 ton, and then, like he is today, empty the ute, be 3.2 ton and bring it out and have a bit of a play. You know, and it shows too that the alphas are not just, I guess you could say, yes, whilst you still can perform and play with them like we are when he's, you know, doing a bit tougher tracks, you know, the whole touring aspect of when the car is heavy and loaded, you need that stability and you need to have a shock that responds. You know, we can have cars that are 3.2 ton dead empty with a coil conversion right up to 5.8 ton in a 6x6 GVM. So, you know, it's all about finding that stability and giving that range to the customer where it can be heavy, but also you can be light and the shock still performs well.
Our goal and our focus was for Aussie made, Aussie supported, serviceable, rebuildable, and making the best controlled shock for touring market in Australia, but also potentially the world. You can buy a suspension kit tomorrow, and if you want to get a GVM later, you can come back and you can get one of our GVMs. Using those shocks, they may require a service. However, you don't need to pull all your suspension out, throw it away and start again. And I think that's that standout in this space. If you want a GVM, they'll say, pull that shock out, or those shocks and spring, pull them out, put these ones in, and you've got to start all over again. If you resale that car and the customer goes, dude, I would have bought it if it had a GVM upgrade, well, hey, those shocks can be utilised into the GVM by adding the other components, whether it be a heavier spring or a diff or whatever. You can then utilise that suspension for a GVM. Bit of fun today, running around the tracks and playing silly buggers.
Shooting through trails and yeah, a couple of flexi spots.
Nice to get out of the office every now and then, you know.
Not bad for a Monday.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's it. So obviously you've been on a few trips now. You've got the manual shocks in yours. Had them in a while. I think you've even had a service. So well, 50,000 now. Pretty
much. I've had them nearly a year and a half now. The manual alphas in the car. Done just over 6,000 Ks with them in the car, so it's been a fast year and a half. 4 years on the actual coil conversion. But yeah, in that time of having the alphas in, we've done trip to Cape York, we've been out to Fink, we've done Vic High Country, all the Wadigans, stuff like that, countless beach trips, Fraser, Moreton, Stratty.
And a lot of heavily loaded stuff too, because obviously when you go out to Fink and places like that, you've got to take everything with, you know.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, when I went out to Fink, I was pretty much just on my GVM limit, canopy, rooftop swags, everything loaded up that we could have. Everyone else's stuff we're dragging along too. And then my last solo trip, I shot down to Vic and Wadigans and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I had camp boxes and all the extra things, but it still loaded up to nearly 3.5 ton. And man, it hit the Vic High Country trails like nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we touch on is, you know, whilst the shocks can, you know, do really well and perform when you're playing, you know, the big focus for us is stability and control of that weight, you know. But it goes to show whether you're loaded like you are today or you're fully loaded that the shocks are going to perform.
And I think the amount of people that come through where they have a GVM upgrade that's uncomfortable when it's unloaded, and that was a big catch for us, is we wanted to make the most comfortable, smoothest shock we could physically do, but also create enough adjustment in them to cover those massive weight changes. And, you know, like these things, man, you know, people got them their 4-inch lift, 35s, canopy, rooftop. They're not a very wide car, so they have that very narrow center of gravity, you know, and that's where they have those 88 ESC issues with the robotic test, because they are that, but we're able to create way more stability in handling it. And, you know, how did you find that?
Oh, it's the stability with the shocks. When I'm on road traveling down, like I do 16 hours in a car sometimes, and you sift them right up on the highway, you just cruise through, you don't have to worry about anything. It's just comfy all the time. But on the tracks, that it's even that wider footprint of having, you know, your track correction, everything like that, and the coil conversion brings everything out way more stable. The way it sits, handles the ground, it just works. And you don't have to be worried about sitting on that 4-inch and 35s being that little bit taller.
Yeah, we did, you know, you do see a lot of guys going, oh, they'll pull out their big lift and tyres because they want to go touring now because of that lack of stability, but we're able to recreate more stability and handling with what we've done. And, you know, I mean, we spend thousands of hours, not just made it, valved it and went, there you go. We spend hours and hours just retesting and doing more and more R&D. We kind of don't stop.
Them shocks in my ute have been out like, oh man, minimum 10 times.
Yeah.
But even, you know, touching on the fact that you bought the coil conversion 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, Mac obviously paid for it full retail back then. I think it was about 30 grand. Obviously,
Yeah,
a bit different
something
now.
about that, yeah.
So, and the good thing about it is you've actually used the car. You know, what I mean, it's
probably
not,
beyond its limits,
I mean,
really.
Let's be honest, let's call it for what it is. It's not us telling you what to say here.
Yeah.
You know, we're asking for your honest feedback, and you know what I guess your response. And we were talking about earlier off camera how the manual versus electrics.
Yeah.
Obviously, for me, I have them in the car, the in-cab control, and it's great. I can just sit there and adjust them. But you made a valid point where you're going, well, I'm out of deflating my tyres anyway. I may as well adjust my shocks.
Everyone goes, oh, but why would you go manual over electric? And I go, well, for me, I like my peace of mind of just, it's set and done. Like set and forget, you don't have to worry about it. But when you're going out to the trails, you've just driven the highway, you got to air down your tyres anyway. That takes 5 minutes at best. Hit your hubs, hit your switch on, like your dial on top of your shocks, and you're good to go.
And
like it's
See, on the other side.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in my car and adjust my shocks. If I had a preference, I wouldn't let my tyres down either. So, you know, I'm heading that, hey, let's do central tyre inflation, you know. So, so different versions of the world, you know, and I think that's the thing is it works for anybody.
And the thing to touch on too, the shocks are identical.
Yes.
Nothing changes. Nothing changes from the shock to the shot. It's just how they're adjusted, basically.
Yeah.
We have a lot of guys that come in and they bought manuals and they come back a year or two later and they go, look, I really want electrics. No problems. Bring them in, service them. Upgrade them to the electric components and off and racing.
I remember when we serviced Mac shocks in this car, man, they done some hard work, you know.
They've been put through the paces. Like, it was 4 days after we fitted them, I took them straight to the Central Australia.
And I think we'll touch it before about stability and that, and I think the thing is, like, yes, I've got them in my ute and that, but I've had the the privilege to drive a lot of Land Cruisers that come in the shop, and regardless of I guess you could say the GVM fitted to them or the suspension, majority of guys will just come in and go, hey, can you give us your 2 cents on how this drives? Or, you know, I guess they feel that we might have it is our bread and butter, so we sort of know and have an expectation of how they drive, and, you know, the biggest one is definitely that stability side of it.
Well, the amount of people that come in with complaints on how their car drives, and we go, look, we can't help you over the phone, bring it in, let us test drive it. And then, you know, we can judge from that, you know, and I think the big one is, you know, we have those cars available for test drive, and we'll often say to them, you know, get in the 79, get in our 300 wagon, get in the new dual cab we're doing, you know, get in those cars and take them for a drive and let them decipher.
Well, that was a selling point for me 4 years ago when I was a nobody. I didn't have followers. I didn't have a name to myself or nothing. I just went to one of the fitters and I said, I've got 25 grand, where do I go spend my money? He said, go test drive them.
Yep.
You know, went to other shops. No, we don't do test drives. Come straight down here. I seen one of the boys, Adam, at the time, and he said, yeah, mate, jump in one, go for a run, see how it goes.
Yeah. And that's
it was awesome.
You got to drive. You got to feel for yourself. I mean, anybody can tell you over the phone, it's the best in the world. It's this, it's that. But until you actually get behind the wheel and drive it and figure it out for yourself.
And remembering too, you know, we only offered this in the GVM space for a long time, the Alpha stuff, just purely because of supply and demand and us to be able to get up and manufacture to the levels that we are now. And now we roll it out as suspension. So, you know, if anyone that wants suspension can do that. They can do electrics. We don't sell electrics out as a retail. They've got to go and get a facility to install it, because like anything, you know, my biggest fear with electrics was if they're not fitted correctly, they can be problematic. However, having them, the service guys and the agents that we deal with know how to fit them, full instructions, and they fit them to the letter, we have no issues. And I think that's, you know.
Yeah, the product's only as good as it's installed sometimes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. But I think that was my biggest reservation on electrics was, okay, now we're giving people electrics on the outside of their car.
Yeah.
You know, is it fraught with drama? And I think it's proven only the fact that, you know, we've been able to control it properly. And ensure that people that are fitting them know what they're doing, and that gives them a good experience.
And Mac will vouch, all the shocks, Mac's seen where we manufacture them, all manufactured here on the Sunshine Coast, so, you know.
Aussie made, every part.
Made, so that's the biggest one. You know, we took Mac for a bit of a tour through the factory and showed him. And
we're now setting up service facilities all over the country, so, you know, they don't have to come back specifically to JMax HQ. They have the ability for service agents around the country to do that. So, you know, this is probably the whole plan of our rollout, is to make sure that we can provide that proper service and support, you know, through the process. So
we don't just get a product and go, oh yeah, she'll be right. We're happy with that. We constantly refine.
Constantly go at it. You know, I think too, like a test of time. You know, I think obviously we were the original instigator of that core conversion side. So for everyone else to follow, and I think, but you know, going through those processes and never stop working on it. You know, I think that's the key to make the product, give it the reputation and make it as good as it can be, not just go, that's close enough, we'll just move on and make something, you know, constantly refine.
And that's why we rely on blokes like yourself and you know, other guys in the industry, you know, guys from Boss Aluminium and Proturin and Just Autos and these companies that are well known in the industry rely on their feedback to give us to be able to refine that product to become the best.
We want the best in the industry to give us their feedback, and that's the only way we can get better.
There we have it. Awesome day out on the tracks with Jai and Jason, going around the rigs, looking at the shocks and how they perform, what we've done over the last 6 months to a year in my car and the boys themselves. And what an epic day.
Mate. Yeah, no, it was good. Hope you can hear me up there because I'm normally not sure. But, you know, it's been a good day. It's been good to get out of the office, run through a bit of the Alphas, obviously get Jace out, get his input from the design perspective. It's been a great day. Thanks, mate.
No, appreciate it.
No, thanks, boys. All right, too easy. Let's go back and do some emails, eh?
Yeah, that's it. Don't forget, if you want more information on the Alpha 2.5 range, head to our website, www.jmax.com.au. Let's get out of here.